Tonight, Engineers and Planners Limited wins tender to take over Damang Mine despite opposition from the NPP Minority in Parliament over concerns of nepotism and lack of fairness with the President's brother's ownership of the winning company.
The marks show that EMP clearly demonstrated or got the biggest score when it came to the technical proposals stage. But based on the scoring, Hit Goldfields could not get the minimum 80%. So on that score, based on the notice, you cannot be taken to the next stage of financial proposal. We left EMP as a lead contender for that.
We'll hear from the minority who believe the process was skewed to favor E&P, which is affiliated to the President's brother. Top story is brought to you by Telecel Connecting Energy's Holy Insecticide Spray and Coil. Enjoy a holy sleep. My name is Kenneth. Gyasi. Welcome to the program. The NPP minority has sounded the alarm, raising red flags about nepotism and political favoritism as government opened a tender to select a Ghanaian company take over the Damang Mine. Well, today, Engineers and Planners Limited, owned by President John Mahama's brother, has been declared winner of that bid and has been recommended by the tender committee to take over. The decision follows a competitive tender process under LI 2176 in which 4 companies responded and 2 were shortlisted for detailed assessment. Engineers and Planners emerged as the highest evaluated bidder ahead of Maripoma, Vortex Resources and Health Goldfields. The NDC government, since taking over power last year, promised to get local access to run some of the major mines across the country. The lease to Goldfields expired last year, but government gave extended to it for an additional 1 year to allow the bidding process to be completed. But the minority in Parliament have been critical of the process, insisting that it was skewed to favor Engineers and Planners. And my colleague Caleb Ziblim is joining me in studio with details of that particular takeover. Caleb, we understand that 4 companies submitted bids for this contract. Who are these companies and what were the requirements for the bidding process?
Yes, Ken. So from the committee that was in charge of tendering this procurement, 4 companies submitted bids to take over the Damang Mine. We had Engineers and Planners, we had Heathfield Goldfields Limited, we had Vortex Resources Mining Group, and then finally we had Maripoma Mining Services Limited. So we had 4 companies in total submitting bids to take over the Damang Mine from Goldfields.
Interesting. And 2 of the companies were eliminated eventually. Which companies were they, and what were the reasons why they did not qualify for the next stage?
Yes, so we had about 3 or 4 stages, that needs to go through before you can either be approved or not approved. And the first stage is mandatory. And the first stage, you have to qualify for about 5 different line items before you can move on to the next stage. Now, these 2 companies, Maripoma Mining Services Limited and then Vortex Resources Mining Group, and according to the committee, these 2 companies, again, Maripoma Mining and then Vortex Resources, did not respond to the first mandatory part of this tendering process. And because they did not respond, they could not pass the mandatory parts, and then they were taken out. And then in the mandatory part, we have proof that the company is wholly owned and registered in Ghana. You have to submit a valid tax clearance certificate. Also submit your SNET clearance certificate, your VAT clearance certificate, a valid certificate of incorporation, and then pay the application fee of 100,000 Ghana cedis. So now these 2 companies, Maripoma Mining Limited and then Vortex Resources Mining Company Group, did not comply with these 4 or these 5 mandatory requirements. So because of that, they could not move to the next stage. So only Heath Goldfields and then Engineers and Planners passed through the mandatory list, and then they went on to the next round.
Engineers and Planners and Health Goldfields, as you mentioned already, advanced to the final stage. What factors led to the selection of Engineers and Planners?
Okay, so in the second stage, you need to go through a tall list of requirements, and then you'll be given a grade based on each requirement. Now, in the second stage, you need to get a pass mark of 80%. And the second stage, EMP got a pass mark of 95.4%, while Heath Goldfields got 63.4%. So in the second stage, because Heath Goldfields did not get the required or the minimum 80%, they could not move on to the final stage of the tendering process. And then engineers and planners had 95.4% of the scores in the second stage. And I can just run you through some of the requirements in the second stage. We have some technical and general experience specific to the project you are applying for. You need to have qualification and experience of key staff. You need to have facilities, equipment, materials, and consumables for the project. And then you also need to have some local content in your application. So based on this criteria, engineers and planners had 95.4%, and then Heath Goldfields had 63.4%. And the pass mark for this second stage was 80%. So because Heath Goldfields did not meet the 80% mark, they reached only 63.4%. They could not move on to the next stage, and then they were disqualified at the second stage. Now in the final stage, so after engineers and planners go through the second stage, after passing with 95%, they had to go on to the last stage. And this last stage is financial evaluation. And you have to demonstrate that you have access to $500 million, in excess of $500 million. And then EMP, or engineers and planners, provided documents from Absa Bank and Stanbic Bank showing that they have access to $505 million. And then this was what the committee used to evaluate that they were financially ready to take over the project. So we started with 4 companies. 2 of them did not meet the mandatory requirements. In the second stage, we had only 2 left, Heath Goldfields and then EMP. You needed an 80% pass mark. EMP got about 90%. Heath Goldfields got about 60%. So they could not move on to the final stage. And then the last stage, EMP had to demonstrate that they had about $500 million. And they showed $505 million from Absa Bank and Stanbic Bank. So the committee is now recommending that EMP be given this contract.
Let's listen to excerpts of what transpired at the Lands and Natural Resources Ministry earlier today.
The marks show that EMP clearly demonstrated or got the biggest score when it came to the technical proposals stage. Now, financial provisions. Before you can move to the next, which is the financial proposals, you must have scored a minimum of 80%. But based on the scoring, Heath Goldfields could not get the minimum 80%. So on that score, based on the notice, you cannot be taken to the next stage for financial proposal. We left EMP as only contender for that. And the requirement was that you must show evidence that you have access to funding in excess of 500 million USD. EMP demonstrated that by documentation that showed that at least Stanbic and Absa have committed to funding the operations to the tune of 505 million USD. So when you combine the financial proposal and the technical proposal, the score that EMP got is 93 points. Almost 93 points. What am I saying?
2.15.
So that's a high score when you combine both the financial and then the technical proposal.
After weighting them down.
Yeah, after weighting them down, that's how the score that they got. Yeah. So based on the requirements, the guidelines published, EMP met all the requirements, despite the mandatory requirements, they met, able to demonstrate that they had the technical and financial capability to be able to run the operation of the mine when it is given to them. On this score, the committee recommended that they be awarded the mining lease. That's in short what the committee did.
So those were the recommendations by the committee. We've also been hearing from the Chief Director of the Lands Ministry, Innocent Halliga, who received the recommendations from the committee. He said the Lands Ministry will look into that report and make a final determination.
This afternoon, we have all witnessed the submitting of the report to the ministry. So on behalf of the minister, I received the report and I will intend be submitting it to him for any analysis to be done, and then decisions can be taken after we have studied the report. But I want to thank the committee very well for their work and for submitting the report to us. On that note, I want to thank all of you.
That's the Chief Director of the Lands Ministry, Innocent Haliga, who received the recommendations from the committee earlier today. Patrick Stevenson is the country manager at Natural Resources Governance Institute. Welcome to the program. What do you make of engineers and planners finally winning the bid to take over Damang Mine?
Well, Evans, I think it's welcome news that the process by which the contract appears to have been awarded, or the procurement process, at least as we know it, has turned out is that this was opened up competitively for different actors that were interested in the mine, to sort of bid for it and submit themselves to technical and financial evaluations. I think that's one of the calls that civil society had been making prior to this process, where there were indications that one particular company was going to be figured out the process, and the process was not going to be opened. So to the extent that there's prima facie some evidence that has been communicated publicly now to the process having been subjected to a competitive process, to the extent that all those processes have been duly complied with and followed, a Ghanaian company coming out and coming out of top, having demonstrated technical and financial capability, I think is what we're looking for. And so, for us, at the Institute, really, this perhaps may come across as a welcome news that subsequent engagements really have to be subject to the process. But I think what will be interesting will be for, the full scope of the report, for example, to be published, so that different actors can get the opportunity to see that the decision was indeed made, very technically and openly, and it's not as though any of those processes were shortchanged, at any point. We have seen tendering processes, under the SWAL regime. I recall, some of the contracts that went to some, entities like Suba and Pro. When I had the opportunity of doing evaluations of some of these, as far as the process itself was concerned, we found several challenges. So I hope that they'll publish a report and we get the opportunity to look at it. But at least this, on the face of it, looks like, in compliance with what standard practice in the industry has to be.
Patrick, I want you to hold on for me, because we are just getting an update from the Lands and Natural Resources Ministry about this particular takeover, and my colleague Caleb Ziblim of our research desk is back in the studio with the details. Caleb, what do you have?
Yes, so we just got a copy of a press release by the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, published on the Minister's X page. And on that, it says, pursuant to Regulations 2621B, the Minerals Commission has recommended that the Damang Mine be granted to EMP and determined by the successful tender committee. It goes on to say that this recommendation has been approved by the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, with a further directive to the Minerals Commission to take all the prerequisites regulatory steps to give effect to this approval. So in a nutshell, the Lands Minister has approved the reports from the tender committee, and they have informed the Minerals Commission that they can go ahead and then let EMP take over the mine.
Caleb Ziblim, thank you very much. Patrick Stevenson, who is the country manager at Natural Resources Governance Institute, is still with me on the telephone lines. Patrick, briefly, I want to pick your thought on that particular approval, which has been issued by the Lands and Natural Resources Ministry. Barely 2 hours after those recommendations were presented, it has swiftly been approved.
Well, that's an interesting development then. I mean, because the presumption would be that, once a report as detailed as this, is publicized or submitted to the minister, there'll be a bit of a poring over, the report, and then subsequent adoption of, the recommendations. If it's coming this very quick, I guess in some cases, some may flag that up as potential area that needs to be looked at. But like I did say, I mean, it's part of the process for assessment and for determining who ultimately gets to procure at least a license or any kind of agreement with government if they've gone through the tender process. And so the act itself not necessarily difficult. It just follows from the recommendations of the committee. But I think it's in 2 hours is a little too quick, and it may give cause for worry. And I say that because, about a couple of weeks ago, we had the opportunity of conducting an assessment of the licensing regime we have within the minerals value chain, particular emphasis on development in the lithium value chain. And two key risk areas always came up to us, which was the questions around the licensing regime itself and then what ultimately happened on revenue management. And I think one of the things we flagged was this process where, different regulatory actors and institutional actors, whether it's on procurement or the Minerals Commission itself, would do assessments, but then the decision-making, after they are done with that assessment, that goes to the minister, seems to be this black box. And it's not clear what kind of mechanism we put around that. So this may raise, questions. But like I did say, as far as the process itself is concerned, if the committee makes a recommendation, then that then becomes the natural follow-on, and the recommendations of the committee get taken up. And like I did say before, this, further goes to strengthen the case of getting local actors to actively participate in our minerals value chain to add value as we progress, for subsequent development. So we would like to see that the results of this work, the assessment, are published, and it's not just, the decision of the minister, for example, but the actual assessment undertaken by the committee is published, just so that these likely black box questions can completely be dispelled and citizens get the opportunity to know that the decisions of the committee reflect their interests.
One of the key opponents to this deal is the minority, who are claiming the process may have favored engineers and planners due to political connections. Is that something that could be true?
Well, again, the thing with political connections, which I suspect what the minority may be aiming at is the likelihood of some corruption or risk of corruption that may have occurred, is that sometimes you can't know these things for a fact, right? Because some of the processes, even leading up to some of the, decisions in the value chain now were started under the SR regime, particularly around Damang Mine, for example, right? It was started under the SR regime. So it's difficult to pinpoint, those specific areas where risks may exist. Yes, the entity, we know is owned by the brother of the president, but it's a separate legal entity in law. Right. And even though there are governance questions around that, I think what may help to assuage, the fears of the minority, and indeed what may be, fears of quite a number of Ghanaians, will be the publication of the results from the tender process. It's not just that, this has been done, the recommendations have gone to the minister and the minister has approved. But if we can publish the full details of the reports of the assessment, then people can rest, assured that, nothing untoward, happened. So that we don't risk a case where, like we saw in 2015 or 16, when, again, the same company got licenses for exploring, bauxite resources in this country. At some point, somebody came and reversed them simply because due processes were not completely, complied with, in 2016, we saw those reversals based on the decision from the Supreme Court. So I would argue that, yes, those are very fair concerns or questions to raise, and the way we can dispel that in a democratic dispensation and for the purpose of proper management of our resources is for the process as we have gone through the report of the process to be published. And I don't think it's anything difficult. If people did a technical evaluation, we can see the scores that were provided. We can equally see, the financials that were submitted by the companies who bid, and whether they had sufficient justification and assets behind them. I think that's a very fair thing, and I'll call on the ministry to at least make that public.
All right, Patrick Stevenson, thank you very much. He's the country manager at Natural Resources Governance Institute. Akwesi Kunedu is the deputy ranking member on the Lands and Natural Resources Committee. I also have Joseph Iroko, who is the acting director of Legal and Minerals Commission and also a member and secretary of the Tender Committee. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time this evening. Let me begin with you, Akwesi. The minority claimed the tender process was skewed to favor engineers and planners. But the tender committee says the selection followed the requirements under LI 2176. So which part of the process do you believe was skewed to favor the president's brother's company, engineers and planners, to win this bid?
Let me first say a very good evening to our cherished listeners. And let's please on record, nobody in this country, and a matter of fact from our side, is against Ghanaian participation or ownership in our natural resource exploration. That must be made clear. But all that anybody would be against is a nature in a manner that these allocation of concessions or mineral rights or mining leases will not be so transparent that any other Ghanaian or every other Ghanaian could not have the same opportunity and time space to be able to participate in that. And as much as I agree with the LI that talks about it's based on first come, first served basis and people, this one was an open competitive tender. That is what the ministry would want us to believe in. Now, my brother, doesn't it surprise you also, in any case, that a tender that closed on the 31st, that was Tuesday of March 2026, that is even by the same letter that the Minister of Lands and Natural Resources issued. That is the first page of the letter, and if you read the last paragraph where it indicates 4 companies that came in, the tender bid closed at 1600 on Tuesday 31st, and today is the 7th, just exactly a week, when we had gone for 4 days off. So we are talking technically about 3 days. We are able to have a review of this tender process, giving a recommendation, and so much as the ministry received today, just under say 30 minutes or 2 hours. The ministry has also given recommendation and approval, and I've called on the Minerals Commission to expedite action and basically make sure that all necessary processes are gone through. That is where the challenge is. If you find this process as being straightforward, fair, under the guise of using legality, and if you don't have a problem with that, then I beg to differ. We must also be looking at the greater exposure that we are also all in all of these putting ourselves through. I have personally been to Daman. I have personally visited the mines. And for all the discussions that have gone on, and for me, just under 4 or 3 days of going to Daman on Wednesday, with the entirety of all the team that went to Daman last week Wednesday, and you probably would have this under 1 week. And we are talking about a natural resource of our country that we are giving away. And if we cannot have a process that will be so open, I guess you are even surprised by your own self that you may have been wondering, if not by the minister's letter, when tender was opened, when people picked, and when even evaluation was done. As we speak, we are yet to have a full report to brief ourselves with as to what the criteria were, where they talked about an 80% in terms of our financial capabilities and even 20% in terms of technical capabilities and the rest. And even per some of the documents that we've seen prior to this report, the setting of the minimum capital requirement for it, and for what we know as to be the capital requirement for operationalization of the Daman expansion project, I believe that even that aspect that was even put in cannot even go an extent to operationalize that. So we must be a bit careful as to how we are going about this whole process, giving away our natural resources. We are not against local participation, not at all. But the point is that it must be free, competitive, and open. That is the point we must raise.
Right.
We cannot have a whole process just rush through under 1 week, and everybody wants us to sit. So that is the point. You have seen the letter by Onsa, the 2-page letter by the minister. I have cited a 2-page letter. I've read it thoroughly. He states all of these. He says people could not meet a minimum qualification of 80% and the rest. And I find it a bit interesting and difficult. Because you see, prior to raising all of these issues that the minority raised, all that we knew was one company. Just within a week, and prior to the set deadline that he put in the letter, we heard about other companies coming involved with Vortex and Heat and Mepoma. So we are waiting to see the technical report that they brought. We are waiting to see the full report of the tender committee, because we will demand that.
Right. Akwesi Kunedu, I want you to hold on for me. Let me bring in Joseph Iroko, who is the secretary of the tender committee. Joseph, welcome to the program. Barely 2 hours after you presented those recommendations to the Lands and Natural Resources Ministry, we're hearing that those recommendations have been accepted. So people are wondering and asking, was the presentation of the recommendations a mere charade?
Sorry, I can hardly hear you. But when the honorable member was speaking, I was struggling to hear him. So I don't know what the problem is, whether it's on your end or my end.
Can you hear me now?
I couldn't hear a word at all.
Can you hear me now?
It's better, so if you can repeat your question. I didn't hear what the honorable member said at all, so just for the record.
Well, he is doubting the bid going to engineers and planners as being genuine and calling for more questions on probing to that. My question to you was that barely 2 hours after you presented your recommendations to the Lands and Natural Resources Ministry about engineers and planners taking over Damang Mine, we are getting the confirmation from the ministry that those recommendations have been approved. There are concerns that was the presentation of the recommendations a mere charade then, because just 2 hours to study those recommendations and approve them is too short, some are saying.
Okay, so thank you very much. I think first of all, for anybody to basically gauge what we have done in terms of our work, they must make reference to the provisions in the LI 2176, provisions 257 all the way to, if you like, 265. That is the governing provision in the law as far as the conduct of tender process for the grant of mineral rights is concerned. So our work should be judged against the provisions to see whether we have complied with the law. And that was what the tender committee did by going in accordance with the law and concluding its work and submitting recommendations to the Minerals Commission, which in turn submitted recommendations to the minister. Now, you spoke about the issue of, to paraphrase your question, that the government has accepted the recommendation and it was so quick. I don't know what you mean by that. The committee has finished its work. It has submitted the recommendation to the government or the minister, and the minister has the power to now take a decision. But don't forget that even in the ordinary course of things at the Minerals Commission, where mineral rights are granted through the first come, first served principle, usually when it gets to the ministry doesn't really take much time in responding in terms of approval or disapproval. So within the industry, that is standard practice. There's nothing concerning about that. I just want to put that on record.
Right. I want to thank you very much for your time this evening. Joseph Iroko is the acting director of legal at the Minerals Commission. He's also the secretary of the tender committee. Earlier, we heard from Akwesi Kunedu, who is the deputy ranking member on the Lands and Natural Resources Committee of Parliament. And a bit earlier, we also heard from Patrick Stevenson, who is the country manager of Natural Resources Governance Institute.
Coming up on Newsnight, emergency cabinet meeting compels transport operators to suspend planned fare increase as Ghana braces for further increases in price of fuel at the pumps.
We think it's inappropriate. They will have to hold their fire for now because we all know that there has been some windfall over the period.
More as bulk oil distributors allay fears of possible fuel shortage but warn of price hikes.
For supply availability, I don't think as a country we have any issues with that. But our key concern should be the pricing, which will be difficult for us to guarantee.
Also coming up this evening, armed police presence in Ajin-Kotoku as onion markets clash between traders leave 7 with injuries, sparking fresh Ghana-Nigeria trade feud.
Road linking from 3 Junction to Ajin-Kotoku, mid-year to Ajin-Kotoku. Customers are complaining of the road. It's the major thing affecting the business now.
We have details as dozens of Ghanaian onion trucks remain grounded in Nigeria in a retaliatory response by Nigerian counterparts.
In Joy News' latest series, When the Sea Comes Home, we'll tell you about a traditional priest facing a losing battle as the sea begins to swallow a shrine he's guarded for over 30 years.
In business,
we're getting more details from the Chamber of Bulk Oil Distributors about the state of product supply in the country.
In sports,
Uganda announces 2027 AFCON will run from June 19 to July 18 next year.
We'll also tell you how coastal erosion influenced the relocation of Ghana's former seat of government from Osu Castle in 2013. The latest of these and many other stories are coming up in the next 60 minutes. My name is Kenneth. Gyasi.
My name is Gemma. Appiah.
You can be a part of the show by sending us a WhatsApp on 055 11 11 997. Details after this.
There are many reasons to connect, and it's all to put smiles on the faces of those you love.
Daddy, thanks for the tea cash, okay? I love you.
That's my daughter, Angela. Caring for my parents, that's my duty. I also get to pay my utility bills easily with Telecel Cash. And to the suppliers at my shop,
hello, sir. Telecel Cash payment received right on time. Thank you.
I get to make them smile because I can pay to my suppliers' merchant numbers, even on other networks directly. My dear ones, we keep the connection stronger when our family, friends, and business relations are happy. Live on cash, enjoy convenience, and make those who matter smile when you send them money with Telecel Cash.
Telecel, connecting energies.
Son, we are so proud of you for setting up this hospital. I really love those hospital beds and waiting chairs. By the way, did you import them?
No, Dad, I didn't. I actually got them from Kindle Books and Stationery right here in Ghana.
Wow. We also bought our office supplies, safes, executive desks, and chairs from Kingdom, and they gave us expert advice on how to set up our office.
Guys, that makes 3 of us. I also got our sofa and bedroom sets, plus our dining hall furniture for our new home from Kingdom.
Wow, Mom, that makes 4 of us. I usually get my stationery items from Kingdom. And my teacher also mentioned that our classroom furniture was provided by Kingdom.
So there you have it. Whenever you're thinking about setting up an office or acquiring furniture for your home, etc., Kingdom Books and Stationery should be your first port of call. With over 40 years experience in the industry, we stock and supply a wide variety of globally sourced office and home furniture, stationery and equipment. Visit our head office,
Takweje, Osu near the Osu Cemetery, Tema near Community 4, Takoradi opposite Vijay Mays Plaza, Cape Coast University Bookshop, Spintex Road near Absa Bank, Atomic Centerpoint Mall, Winneba University Campus, KNUST, the University Bookshop, and Santasi in Kumasi. You can also visit our shop online, www.kingdomstoreonline.com. Hurry while stock lasts. For further inquiries, contact us on 050-162-0810 or 0302-764-101. Email info@kingdomgh.com. Kingdom Books and Stationery Limited, where quality and affordability is assured. Terms and conditions apply.
Couldn't sleep at night. Mosquitoes will be whining my ears, bugging me all night long. Till I got a remedy. Now I'll be spraying them away with holy insecticide spray. Me I go spray them away with holy insecticide spray. When I sleep, me dana mada with holy insecticide spray.
Holy mosquito coil, holy multi-purpose insecticide spray. Dana kron kron. For bulk purchase, call 0302 681582. This advert is FDA approved.
Tonight, an emergency cabinet meeting planned for this week has compelled transport operators to suspend a planned fare increase as Ghana braces for further increases in price of fuel at the pumps. Joy News understands the cabinet meeting has been scheduled for Thursday. The Ghana Private Road Transport Union, GPRTU, and other transport operators met with the Ministry of Transport today to push for a fare increase.
However, the ministry appealed to them to hold off until after the cabinet meeting to consider measures to cushion Ghanaians against rising fuel prices. Speaking to the media after the engagement, General Secretary of the Ghana Road Transport Coordinating Council, Emmanuel Ohene-Yeboah, said the operators had submitted proposals including possible tax reductions on fuel.
We are going back and wait till the president comes from wherever he is, finished with the cabinet meeting and whatever decision they take. So we have actually tabled a number of proposals, including taking off some taxes so that we bring the price down. But once he comes and there's a way of, he had a way of dealing with it and bringing the fuel price down. So I have no justification increasing transport fare. All that we need is that the fuel price is within the rate that we can work and make our profits.
What percentages did you propose?
We haven't proposed anything yet. Okay. We haven't proposed it because we haven't discussed the details of the increment, whatever increment we have to do. So we have to get the computation together, get our numbers before we can actually look at how much, if it's possible to increase. But it hasn't come to the table for discussion.
Already, some unions have decided to increase their transport fares effective tomorrow. How do you react to this?
Well, we think it's inappropriate. They will have to hold their fire for now because we all know that there has been some windfall over the period. And once this week we are able to hold it for a number of few days, we'll be able to deal with whilst we are trying to deal with the ministry. Once we finish with them and we come out with a good whatever decision we have we'll be good to go.
You heard the General Secretary of the Ghana Road Transport Coordinating Council, Emmanuel Ohene-Yeboah. While most of the transport operators have suspended the planned increment, one of the biggest transport companies in the country, VIP, has increased fares by some 25%. The company cites, among others, the poor nature of roads as the reason behind the increment, which takes effect from tomorrow. Adakabre Frimpong Manson is the General Manager for VIP.
VIP is a limited liability company and that we are not part of any union. The meeting we are led to believe between the Transport Ministry is with the GRTCC and the GPRTU. This is a purely private company and then we make an assessment and where we believe we need to plug some holes, we have to plug some holes. There are two key things that are running around. First, the buses spend a lot of time on the Accra-Kumasi route. Something that should have been 6 hours, we are spending up to 10 hours because of bottlenecks at Usino, bottlenecks at Nkoko, bottlenecks at Konongo, and also sections of the road are also extremely bad. So that increases the maintenance cost and then increases diesel consumption. And then 16 years ago, Accra-Kumasi was 15 cities. And 16 years later, 150 cities. I believe taking depreciation into consideration, tear and wear into consideration, it is even somewhat cheaper. A reduction of prices does not come in at this stage. I said to you that in March 2025, we're going to increase prices at the intersection of the Transport Minister. Honorably, we suspended those prices. So what is in Ghana that was 10 cities 2 years ago that you believe would remain 10 cities 2 years later?
Adakabre Frimpong Manson is the General Manager for VIP. We've also been hearing from President John Mahama, who spoke at the Kwo Business Forum last week, allaying fears of fuel shortage in the country, saying that Ghana has enough fuel in stock.
More predictable pricing. Our constant focus had been on macroeconomic stability, to stabilize the macroeconomic environment, and we have done so. And also to create a more resilient economy. As we said, shocks will come. You cannot predict external events, but you must create an economy that is able to withstand those shocks. I know Iran and Israel and all have been fighting. So far, our economy has shown some resilience. We have almost 6 months of export cover. We have about 6 weeks We have about 6 weeks of petroleum stock in our tanks, and so there's no danger of us running out of petroleum within the next 6 weeks. Even as we're using the reserve stocks, we also are replenishing it, and so there's no danger that we would have queues at filling stations and other places. In addition, and indeed the most important event that has taken place since last year is the performance of the Ghanaian currency. The currency has stabilized, and it has made the investment environment more predictable for business people. And so even levies and duties at the port are lower. And that's why I tell importers, I don't see any reason why you should try and underdeclare your imports, because the bank.
That's President John Mahama at the Kwewu Business Forum last week. And some countries are already reeling under the impact of the Middle East tensions on fuel prices, experiencing fuel shortage. And Gemma, Appiah, who loves international news, has been going through the list of countries who are reeling under this pressure. Gemma, which countries are those?
Let's start with the Philippines. It has declared a national emergency over an imminent danger of critically low energy supply. Petrol stations are running short, and the government has imposed strict fuel conservation measures, including 4-day work weeks in some localities. Then also we have Indonesia. The government has ordered civil servants to work from home 1 day per week to reduce fuel use, and commercial airlines have also cut capacity due to jet fuel scarcity. Then in South Korea, the country has imposed strict vehicle use rules, and the country has reported a roughly 76% drop in jet fuel availability, with petrol stations operating under tight limits. And in Australia and New Zealand, while they have not completely run out of fuel, the governments there have warned of rationing and urged citizens to use public transport to protect fuel for critical sectors such as agriculture and mining. So if you're in Australia and New Zealand, you may have your own car, but the government is advising that you use public transport. Then in Pakistan, the government has pushed large portions of workforce to work from home and has introduced fuel-saving measures, though outright shortages are more localized than nationwide.
The Middle East tension is biting harder than we think. But back home here in Ghana, though, you may not have to bother about fuel shortage like other countries, but the challenge is the amount you would have to pay for it. Let's listen to the CEO of the bulk oil distributors, Dr. Patrick Kwekuofori.
With that, we've been able to be rest assured about supply and its relative issues without any consequence to some of these challenges that may occasion. Not only that, we've also have our major trading partners having stronger relationship. Dangote, either they supplying them crude and off taking the refined products, which has also in a way lessened the burden and has also provided a reliable supply source for us. In addition, as a country, we've been blessed with the investment of the private sector. Cintio Refinery that is currently providing about 30% of our daily consumptions, which also take the burden of most of our international partners. And we also aware that some of these, our international trade partners, are the ones who have been locking in the cargoes with Cintio to ensure at least production at Cintio continue to go on. And we can confidently say that the monthly receipts of 1 million barrels that Cintio will need to produce has also been confirmed for this month and then the subsequent month. Just that they all face with huge changes in price differentials, with premiums for crude moving from $3 previously to now $20 and even $25 on a barrel. So that clearly gives you a huge dispensation, a huge delta. Judging from previously, you would have paid for 1 million barrel, you would have paid like just $3 million or so, but now you are supposed to cough out over 125 million to cover for the whole parcel. So these are some of the eminent challenges that we face. But for supply availability, I don't think as a country we have any issues with that. But our key concern should be the pricing, which will be difficult for us to guarantee.
Finally,
let's go to the phone line and speak to Samuel Amoah. He's the Deputy PRO for the GPRTU. Welcome to News 9. I know you are awaiting the outcome of the Cabinet meeting on Thursday, but what would be the best case scenario?
All right. Thank you very much for having me. Let me say good evening to you and whoever is listening to you. Yes, it's rather unfortunate that our drivers have to wait, again, but we are law-abiding citizens. We serve every government of the day, and so therefore we have asked our drivers to, remain calm, waiting for the outcome of the cabinet meeting. We are hoping that the outcome will be positive. If I say positive, I mean we as commercial operators don't want to increase transport fares. I used to say this, that any time transport fares goes up, it affects everything in the country. Even it goes against our businesses. So we are waiting patiently to see if the outcome will be like there has been an intervention where we will see some reduction on a petroleum product. Then we also maintain the fares that we are taking for now. But apart from that, if it still, remain the same, then we will also not have any other option than also to, push for an increment of transport fares. But before then, I think there has been some pressure coming from, our drivers, massive pressure, but we keep, talking to them that they should exercise a little patience to wait for the outcome of the cabinet meeting, so we know what to do.
Kindly hold on for us, Samuel Amoah. We have to speak to STC as well.
Exactly. And we have the Deputy Managing Director in charge of Finance and Administration at STC, Nuhu Hamidan. Welcome to the program. Your counterparts in the transport business, VIP, has announced transport increment, citing a number of reasons, including the poor nature of roads and fuel prices. Is this something you are also considering?
Well, let me say good evening to you and our cherished listeners. Yes, at STC, we are government operators. STC is fully owned by government because NET owns 80% and then the government has 20% shares. At the moment, STC, we don't have any plans on the table at the moment to increase fares. Admittedly, fuel prices have gone up, and obviously it will affect the cost of operations. But we work under the ministry, and we are waiting to hear what the ministry will say. You believe, you will agree with me that His Excellency the President has been very proactive on this subject. Before we even start, those in the transport sector start talking. He has already mentioned it, that the fuel prices are going up, and he has arranged an emergency meeting of cabinet to look at the issues and deal with it. I believe strongly that at the end of the day, something positive will come out of that. So let's all wait till the cabinet meeting is done. The government come with a position on the first. You remember some time ago when the fuel prices came down, the same Ministry of Transport sat down with the operators and agreed on reduction. And I believe that the ministry is on top of its game, and they will do the right thing. At the moment, even though it has come up in our management discussions, but we don't have immediate plans now to increase the fare until we hear from our mother ministry, which is the Ministry of Transport.
Mr. Hamid and Gemma here. Fuel prices have increased, which have also increased the cost of your operations, but fares remain the same. Are you making any profit at all?
Obviously, even if you are making profit, it will not be at the same margin. If you are making profits of X amount of money and your cost of operation is going up, obviously the margin of profit will come down. And that is what I've acknowledged. When we look at the increment of fuel from around 11 cities to around 17 cities, that's around 49% increment. Obviously, it would have impact on your operation, but you don't just get up and increase fuel because prices, because there are so many things that come in to that decision. And as a government operator, as a transport operator, in fact, the leading transport operator in this country, we are aware of the circumstances we have found ourselves.
Right.
Like I said, we don't have immediate plans to increase. Government is proactive enough. Cabinet is meeting, and I'm sure a decision will come. So let's wait to hear from government. And I believe that after the cabinet meeting, our boss, the Minister for Transport, will convene a meeting and then communicate what the positions are. And I believe that even after the cabinet meeting, he and the transport operators will have a discussions and have a common understanding, just like before when the fuel prices were decreased. I mean, he sat with the operators and then requested that we should increase our fares by 15%, decrease our fares by 15%, which we did. And I'm sure let's just give him a bit of time to go through the process, and then I believe it will be communicated, right? So like I said, to emphasize, we don't have immediate plan from the STC to increase the prices until we get discussion. We get into the discussion with the Ministry of Transport.
On the table, that particular meeting between GPRTU and the Ministry of Transport is the demand for the removal of some taxes on fuel products. Is that something that the STC agrees with, those demands?
Like I said, the minister is fully aware of the nuances with the fuel prices. Likewise, the president.
Okay.
It's not only about the fuel tax. There are so many things. We buy parts, and parts also increase. There are so many things that comes in, and I think we should give them the opportunity to sit down and deal with the issue comprehensively. Then government will come. Because if it's even about taxes, it's the government that will take the decision. If it's about spare parts, if it's about whatever that comes in, the input are many. Government will sit down and look at it holistically and communicate to us. Once it's communicated to us, I mean, we'll do the needful. So I think we should give the government the opportunity to really sit down. I understand today the GPRTU people met my minister, Honorable Minister for Transport, and I'm sure they have made a case. They have given him all the needed inputs to be able to have that discussion at cabinet. So.
Right. Nuru Hamidan, thank you very much. Is the Deputy Managing Director in charge of Finance and Administration at STC.
Mr. Amo, let me come back to you. As you await the outcome of the cabinet meeting, the transport company VIP has gone ahead to increase fares starting from tomorrow.
Yes, it's rather unfortunate, hearing this from the VIP because we all use the same, we all buy the same fuel, we all buy the same pass, we all apply the same rules that they are talking about. And it's a situation that we are found ourselves in. And, the sector minister says that we should exercise a little patience and that, government is trying to do something that, will not push us to increase transport fares, because increasing transport fares, will cause, so many things. Commuters will be in a hardship position and all that. But for them to just come up, and increase their fares, to us, we think that is not the best thing for them to do. Though there is freedom of association. I know they don't belong to the GPRTU, but they all fall under the Transport Ministry. So, I think that they should have, listen to what the ministry is saying to exercise patience, because we also have vehicles that apply Kumasi, we also have vehicles that apply the Bolga and all those areas. They are taking, the fares that we are taking for now. They are not going to increase. So why is it that they will just, jump ahead to come up with this increment?
Thank you very much. Samuel Amwa is the Deputy PRO for the GPRTU.
And there's armed police presence in the Appiah Kotoku onion market following clash between traders that left 7 sustaining varied degrees of injury. The clash, which saw the firing of gunshots, occurred today, and according to traders, it was triggered by an alleged attempt by some Nigerian traders to retail onion in the local market in breach of agreed market arrangements. This has fast reignited the long-standing trade feud between Ghana and Nigeria, as they have blocked the return of dozens of Ghanaian trucks carrying onion from Nigeria. First, my colleague Adobia Asari visited the Appiah Kotoku market, and this is what she saw.
Calm has retained at the Appiah Kotoku onion market a day after a violent clash between Nigerian onion traders and Ghanaian onion traders. Now, according to the Ghanaian onion traders, the confrontation was triggered by what they believe is a growing deliberate attempt by Nigerians to infiltrate and dominate the onion business here at Appiah Kotoku. What they say is deeply affecting their livelihoods.
There was a misunderstanding, that excuse between the our Ghanaian counterparts here and our Nigerian counterparts at the other section.
What caused that misunderstanding?
Oh, it's about our trade. That is, the Nigerians are trying to take over our market with inferior goods and lower prices, making us running out of business.
So I do know that you import from Burkina Faso, Niger, and Nigeria. Are you having troubles with the other two?
It's only Nigerians that we have trouble.
So you're not having problems with Burkina Faso, Niger?
Not at all. We have a number of cars that are supposed to come per week, but we realize that the number of cars coming is far more, about 3 times the number we're expecting. So we decided to take action, that is stopping the cars from offloading. By so doing, the Nigerian called their Nigerian counterparts back at Nigeria to tell them that we've stopped them from offloading their goods. They too take a decision by stopping our cars, our trucks over there from coming. As I'm speaking to you, we'll have about 70 trucks on Nigeria stopping. The goods are there for about a week.
These are perishable goods.
These are perishable goods. It's not easy. This is people's livelihood. This is people's properties.
The police have been deployed in the area as business resumes today. They're standing at vantage points, ensuring safety and security of traders and buyers.
Now, the Northern Regional Police Command has announced a significant breakthrough in its fight against crime, with 40 convictions secured in recent operations. The convictions, which include fines ranging from 2,400 cedis to 120,000 cedis and custodial sentences of 15 months to 15 years, are a result of the efforts of the Regional Special Operations Team, codenamed Red Maria. The Northern Regional Police Commander, DCOP Wisdom Lavoy, who disclosed this at a press conference in Tamale, said the team has arrested over 200 suspects and conducted several intelligence-led swoops in hotspots.
The Red Maria team was established to fill the vacuum left by the exit of the IGP Special Operations Team, known as the Black Maria, with a mandate to combat crime including drugs and robbery. The team has been working for the past 1 month. Addressing the media on their work so far, the Northern Regional Police Commander, DCOP Wisdom Lavoy, said a total of 72,000 Ghana cedis has been realized as fines from the convicted persons, with 32 paying their fines, 87 prison terms, and 31 on remand.
A total of 217 persons have been arrested and processed for court for these offenses. These offenses include drug possession and peddling, prostitution, unlawful assembly, and out of this number, 40 persons have been convicted by the court. Sentences imposed include fines ranging from 2,400 Ghana cedis to 120,000, and also a custodial sentences ranging from 15 months to 15 years imprisonment. 32 convicted persons have paid their fines. 8 persons are currently serving prison sentences. 31 accused persons remain on remand. A total amount of 72,000 has so far been realized as fines paid to the court.
The regional police commander commended the residents for their support and urged them to continue to support the police with information.
The command also acknowledges the proactive role played by the members of the public in supporting the police operations. In particular, the command commends the residents of Ward K in Tamale for their vigilance and cooperation in apprehending a no-drug peddler and handing him over to the police on the 2nd of April 2026. The suspect is expected to be arraigned before court today.
DCOP Lavoie said the police have received commendations from notable people in the region.
I've spoken personally to certain few individuals who indicated to me that the Red Maria is on top of its work, has been very professional in the discharge. You will not hear any gunfire, intimidation, and the rest.
Let's go back to an earlier story where we told you there is armed police presence in the Ajin Kotoku onion market following the clash between traders that left 7 sustaining varied degrees of injury. The ranking member on the Trade, Industry and Tourism Committee, Michael Ochibefi, joins us now on the phone line. Mr. Ochibefi, has your committee taken notice of this matter?
Thank you for the opportunity. Yes, we have. We also have received petitions from 2 institutions or trade associations who have also petitioned the committee to look into the matter. And so, but prior to that, the minority also has taken time to delve into the issue, to be able to understand the whole issue. And we've gone as far as trying to travel on this matter to know those who are even have been contacted to undertake the project on behalf of the Ghana Revenue Authority. So a lot has been done, as far as this issue is concerned.
Right. Mr. Ochibefi, I want you to hold on for me. Let's bring in John Desmond Nisoa, who is the Municipal Chief Executive of the Ga West Assembly. Welcome to the program. What's the security situation in the market as we speak? Because we know there's been a police deployment following the clash. Hello, MCU. Can you hear me? Do we have Desmond Nisoa on the line? Unfortunately, we cannot get to him. Do we have him now?
Yes, I'm here.
I'm asking what the security situation is today at the market because we understand there's been a police deployment following the clash.
Yes, good evening. It's been calm. So far, so good. The police intervened. And as of today, we've had 2 separate meetings. The divisional command, a representative from the assembly, met with the regional command at the regional commander's office. At the meeting was the regional head of legal, the deputy commander, the regional commander himself, and representatives of the 5 groups of the onion market. So issues were discussed, and at the end of the day, the regional commander emphasized the need for peaceful transaction and for calm to prevail. So I can say it's been good. Instructions have been given to settle the disputes. That is, I think, let me give you a bit of background. I know you have covered this already. However, for the benefits of your listeners.
Briefly.
Yes. We brought goods or onions specifically from Nigeria, and they were supposed to offload to one of the groups. And the other group said they wouldn't agree. There was altercation and became threatening. So they impounded the trucks, and the Nigerian people who brought the goods from Nigeria also called Nigeria. So Nigerian people too impounded Ghanaian trucks in Nigeria. So the settlement is, the arbitration is that both parties should allow each business to carry on. That is, the Ghanaian people should allow the goods to be offloaded, and the Nigerian people too should release the Ghanaian trucks. So this is the instruction given.
Right.
Secondly, this afternoon, Ministry of Trade also called all parties, and discussion went on smoothly, and there is peace. Directives have been given, so we pray that the coming days should be calm and peaceful.
Right. MC, has there been any arrests?
Yes, there have been arrests, and the police investigating and doing their diligence.
How many people have been arrested?
So far, I think I will not be able to give you the number because investigation is ongoing.
But you are the head of security in the municipality. Have you not been briefed on the number of people who have been arrested?
Well, three were, but investigations are ongoing, which means that more people might be, because accomplices and anybody that showed off threats or any altercation leading to the violence will be held responsible.
How long is the police going to be at the market?
They've been patrolling there since the incident happened. So for the past 2 days they've been there, tonight they're going to be there as well.
And what's the status of the 7 persons who were reported injured?
So far, they are undergoing treatment and responding. So far, so good.
So is the market still operational? Are people going about their duties trading?
Yes. As of today, yes. The situation is calm and business is ongoing.
Thank you very much, John Desmond Nisua. He is the Municipal Chief Executive of Ga East Assembly.
Mr. Befi, how do we prevent this from escalating into a full-blown dispute between Ghana and Nigeria?
Okay. As we are speaking, I am with the National Chief Imam because he also heard about it and he called. So we're going to find a way to bring all the leadership to a meeting whereby Chief Imam or himself or a representative will be part of it, so that we ensure that we have a common understanding and how businesses should be carried out without taking sides. And we hope that with the arbitration agenda that we have drawn, if all of them should comply, we're not going to see the reoccurrence of this violence.
Thank you very much. It's now time for business, and George Wiafe is here with the latest. George, what have you got for us?
Well, Kenneth, coming up in business, Bank of Ghana Governor Dr. Johnson Isiama reveals one bank is working to list on the Ghana Stock Exchange, and economist Professor Peter Korte pushes for value addition after government finalized with the settlements of investors that participated in the 7-year bond auction. The business news on Newsnight is brought to you by MTN Business. Welcome to the new world of business. Kingdom Books and Stationery, your number one-stop shop for all your office essentials. Synthesis tanks and Pepsodent Herbal and Charcoal.
Je m'appelle.
Je m'appelle.
Je m'appelle.
Mappé. Et mappé. Hey, Asamo. French idiot. This is midi croissant.
Meet Aja. She makes sobolone in a small shop in Kaswa. She's going places with MTN Ejumapa. Now, she's learning French kakra to teach her francophone customers indigenous recipes.
Watashi no namae wa.
Watashi no namae. Boy.
Whoa. She's learning Japanese too? Watashi. What? to the whole Gyasi. If you're a woman with a small business, join MTN Ejumapa today by dialing *5060# and enjoy 150 megabytes data, a lifestyle bundle for social media, free MTN to MTN calls every Monday, and an insurance cover. You will also gain access to expert training, discounts on digital tools, and financial support to grow the business of your dreams. Terms and conditions apply. MTN.
Cast your mind back to 2022. The prices were rising. The stress was high. Every liter of fuel felt like a sacrifice. Do you remember who stepped forward first? When others were comfortable with high prices, Star Oil chose you. We cut our own profits so you could keep your AC on, keep your engines running, and keep your life moving without the heavy burden. We gave you room to breathe when things felt tight. Because of you, our star savers, we became #1. Today, the pumps are a battleground. Others are finally cutting prices because they have to. But Star Oil, we do it because we want to. Don't just chase a price, remember a friendship. We were there for you then, and with new innovations coming your way, we are here for you now. Star Oil, still quality and affordable fuels for all.
If you want quality, this be where you belong. Hey, tough, hey, strong. Oh, gonna shout and sing the song. When the sun they hot, syntax no break. When the rain they fall, still no shake. Builders they choose and plumbers they prove. Any project you they start. Every mosquito study run away.
This advert is FDA approved.
Welcome back to Business on Newsnight. Now, Bank of Ghana Governor Dr. Johnson Isiama has revealed that one commercial bank is working to list on the Ghana Stock Exchange possibly this year. The move is part of efforts to improve long-term lending to businesses in the country. The governor of the Bank of Ghana was speaking to some businesses and senior officials of commercial banks at the Co-Business Forum.
The banking industry, and you are looking for longer-term capital. What it means is you need to borrow money over, say, 5 years. Why? Because you want to set up a factory. It will take you about 2 years to import the machines from China, right? And by the time it's finished setting up, it's already 3 years. Meanwhile, you have to start repaying the interest. So one area we need is to improve on the availability of longer-term capital. How do we do it? That's one area we are looking at. So I set up a committee that I chair together with the stock exchange, together with the other regulators. And we are nudging banks first to list on the Ghana Stock Exchange. Because that's one form of patient capital we want to make available. Last year, through that effort, we got about 3 banks or so listing. So far, I've got news. One bank is ready to go this year. The objective is to get a couple others to also list on the exchange. Then the next thing is to work with the pensions industry. They're also sitting on a lot of funds. What more can we get part of the pension funds to do productively?
And that is Bank of Ghana Governor Dr. Johnson Isiama. Economist Professor Peter Korte is making a strong case for value for money and prudent use of government resources. Now, this is coming after government concluded taking funds from investors whose bids were accepted during last week's 7-year bond sale. More than 3 billion cedis worth of bids came in from investors. The government just accepted 2.7 billion Ghana cedis. Professor Peter Korte tells Joy Business everything must be done to ensure that we do not return to that debt exchange or possibly haircut for investors.
I will be very much interested in how the money is used, how efficient we use the money. The rate is good, but then how do we ensure that we get value for money? Oftentimes we borrow, we invest, and we see a lot of waste in the system. This time around, when we invest, when we borrow, we should invest efficiently and ensure we get value for money. We should ensure that it will generate returns. Come repayment period, we should be able to repay our debt. So for me, it's good. I would encourage government to continue to borrow from the domestic market, but not to crowd out private investors in terms of borrowing. But in so doing, they also have to look at how efficient these funds are applied to the Ghanaian economy. What I think, now the parameters are set by the IMF program and what we have achieved so far sets the framework for us to be able to borrow sustainably, be able to invest, and also ensure that we are able to repay anytime we borrow.
That is economist Professor Peter Korte. First Atlantic Bank has announced that the bank's profit before tax rose by more than 30% to reach 703 million Ghana cedis in 2025. This resulted in the bank declaring a dividend of 29 pesos per share. Speaking at its annual general meeting in Accra today, Managing Director Odum Odumfa told Joy Business about the bank's progress and factors that have driven this solid performance.
All the major indices grew. Deposits went up almost 40%. Profits hit over 700 million, profit before tax. The balance sheet also grew in like manner. And above all, efficiencies improved, revenues went up, impairments are going down, and we will try and do even better this year. Economy, the environment. We have macroeconomic stability, and that is always good for business. I think if you look at all the indices, whether you're looking at the exchange rates or interest rates or general stability in the economy, it helps.
Managing Director of First Atlantic Bank, that is Odumfa. Now, La Palm Royal Beach Hotel has inaugurated a new food initiative dubbed the Heritage Lunch. This is aimed at celebrating and preserving Ghana's rich food culture. Business Development Manager at the hotel said Kolengdu actually explained that the initiative is designed to promote local cuisine at affordable prices. He spoke to the media at the inauguration ceremony here in Accra.
We've decided that at the heels of the Heritage Month, we want to launch a cuisine that will actually be to the pocket of everyone for a hotel of our capacity, for us to offer something that everybody can walk in on daily basis from Monday to Friday and be able to have lunch. And we are saying that we are launching Heritage Lunch, which is for 150 cedis. You come in, you can get your fufu, you can get banku velcro, you can get akplen, wokplen, abobitati. You can also get TZ. You can also get anything that is local right here at the iconic Ghanaian village.
Business Development Manager at La Palm Royal Beach Hotel, Seth Kuglenu. And that's all for business on Newsnight. Back to you, Kenneth.
Thank you, George. Let's do sports.
Kenneth, before I do sports, I have to ask you how your weekend was. It was a very long one. How did you spend your Easter holidays?
Oh, it was fantastic. Just that I spent yesterday, which was supposed to be Easter Monday, at work.
Oh, sorry.
Aside from that, it was a good holiday.
Well, and reminder that Madrid are also in action today against
of course.
Bayern Munich.
If anybody can beat Bayern Munich, it's Real Madrid. You know that.
But the head-to-head is equal. I think 12 wins for each side.
Have you checked the goal difference?
I mean, by a win is a win, no? Doesn't it count?
It is, but I would rather win 10-0 than 1-0. Wouldn't you?
All right. So let's do some AFCON, where the Uganda Local Organizing Committee for the 2027 Africa Cup of Nations have confirmed that the tournament will be held from June 19 to July 18 next year. My colleague Victor Achutamakula has been following the development and reports.
The tournament will be the 36th edition of the AFCON and will be jointly hosted by Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania under the Pamoja banner, marking the first time three nations have combined to stage the tournament. The announcement was made today in Kampala after a local organizing committee meeting for the tournament. Preparations for the competition are already in progress, including the construction and upgrading of stadiums such as a new facility in Hoima, which is expected to host several matches during the tournament. Also, to ease the cross-border travel for supporters, organizers have also introduced the Pamoja visa, which will allow fans to move freely between the three host countries throughout the competition. Authorities have said that they anticipate more than 500,000 visitors could travel to East Africa for the tournament, providing a significant boost to tourism and regional trade.
So that's Victor Achutamaklu there with the report on the latest development regarding next year's Africa Cup of Nations set to be staged in Uganda. And that's it for the sports segment.
I'm praying that by then we wouldn't have a new 2025 AFCON winner. I'm praying so.
Hopefully it doesn't happen.
Thank you very much. Let's bring you more stories this evening.
For more than 30 years, Togbe Akpaso, a traditional chief priest, has performed rituals at his shrine in Labadi, believing the land and the gods he serves would be protected. Today, the sea is moving closer, threatening to wash away the shrine he has guarded for decades. His faith remains strong, but he is now appealing to government for help as the waters advance. Emmanuel Juvenu has more in Joy News' latest series, When the Sea Comes Home, chronicling the impact of sea erosion in Accra.
Every morning, traditional priest Togbe Akpasu pours libation here, calling on his gods to protect the land he has guarded for more than 30 years. But the land he is praying for is slowly disappearing. The sea that once stayed far from his shrine now moves closer with every strong wave, threatening to wash away the very place he believes is sacred.
The first time the sea was far from us, it's not this near like the way it is now. So now we are seeing that the sea is coming. More than a years now. Sometimes as we the traditional people or the spiritual people, we need a ceremony to perform for the sea. Sometimes that sea can even go far, will not come to. And then sometimes you come to.
The changes are no longer small. Parts of the land have already been taken. Walls have collapsed. The ground that once felt solid now breaks apart after every high tide.
It's coming. We all are seeing that the sea is coming. Sometimes you go far across, sometimes it will come. So we are seeing at the side like that.
For Togbe Akpaso, the sea is something he speaks to. He believes it listens, and he believes it can be persuaded to stay away. That is why he continues the rituals, even as part of the shrine begins to collapse.
If we part this corner right now, nearly remove everything. As we are in the traditional way, we know how to handle this kind of the situation now. Then we are still with them. It can even cover people, but I will be here.
Around him, residents are trying to protect what is left of their homes the only way they can. Some pile rubbish and broken blocks near the shoreline, hoping the waves will slow down.
The work of the government now, they only have to help us with those stones, big stones to let the sea go back.
Experts say the fears in communities like Labadi are real. Studies show that a large part of Ghana's coastline is already eroding, meaning the sea continues to move inland every year.
We may lose our coastline into the dry land about 30 kilometers by 2050 or 2050, by the mid-century. if we can begin to do something now, then of course we can stand the test of time.
For Togbi, the greatest fear is not losing the land. It is the thought that one day the sea could wash away the shrine and the gods he believes have protected this place for years.
If something like that will happen, I will be the first person to remove from here. Because I hear their voice. That if something like that will happen, I will be the first person who will remove. As soon as I started removing, and then other people will know that there is no chance.
The sea is still moving closer. The walls are still collapsing. And the people who live here say they cannot fight it alone anymore. The question now is how long this land and the shrine that stands on it can survive if nothing is done. Emmanuel Jivanu, Joy News, Labadi.
In other stories this evening, the NPP Minority is demanding an apology from President John Mahama and the NDC to Ghana's religious and traditional leaders over what they describe as a betrayal on the anti-LGBTQ bill. The minority today addressed a news conference on the matter. Listen to Asin South MP and a co-sponsor of the bill, John Intim Forjo, who spoke on behalf of the minority.
The NDC and President John Dramani Mahama must apologize to the Christian Council, the Catholic Bishops' Conference, GPCC, and all other ecumenical bodies, the office of the Chief Imam, and our imams, our Muslim clerics, traditional rulers, and concerned CSOs for the double standards and contradictory priorities demonstrated between the period in opposition and now in power. Additionally, we call on the clergy, our Muslim clerics, communal bodies, traditional rulers, the civil society organizations to call out the NDC and President John Dramani Mahama on their U-turn on LGBT issues to maintain their spirited advocacy for the passage of the pending bill and for President Mahama to sign same into law as soon as it is passed by the 9th Parliament.
And he also raised red flags over what he describes as an attempt to introduce LGBTQ concepts into Ghana's constitution through the ongoing constitutional review process.
When you check page 107 and page 108 of the recommendations of the Constitutional Review Committee, you would find another covert introduction attempt to introduce LGBT into the bedrock of our constitution, should the Constitutional Review process pass. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, the National Democratic Congress has shown its true colors. The real shift we are witnessing is beyond ideology. It is purely deception. They exploited the genuine moral concerns of Ghanaians as a stepping stone to power. They weaponized it to deceive the public, only to turn around in power to abandon the pursuits, and have now deprioritized those concerns at the altar of political convenience and international appeasement.
The government spokesperson Phyllis Kwacho-Fosu has dismissed the NPP's criticism of the yet-to-be-passed anti-LGBTQ bill as, quote, nothing more than political posturing, unquote. He spoke on the Pulse.
If they were willing to sign it, it would have been signed. So a party that behaves this way cannot turn around and support to be lectured and sermonized on the same subject. President Rama has been clear that the very day that any LGBT law is brought to his desk, he will sign it into law. As we speak, that has not happened. Because the NPP and President Akufo-Addo refused to sign that bill, the bill elapsed, it ceased to exist. And Ghanaian law says that it has to go back to Parliament. So the same process that was used to pass it is used. And that is what is happening. The NPP in Parliament know that the bill is now at committee level.
Well, that's it for now, but before we go, here are some of the messages you've been sending to our WhatsApp platform. Nane Kuyamwa Boatin from Ablekuma Central says, just because of ordinary honorary certificate, President John Mahama has shifted his stance on LGBTQ. I can imagine how he will feel if the community hands over some cash. I will urge both the Christian and Muslim community to rise up against the stance and power pressure on Parliament to pass the bill into law. Francis in Accra says, why is MPP and its agents calling for the removal of the Dumso levy on petrol to avoid Dumso, but not any other tax which can be more than the 1 cedi Dumso levy. To NPP MPs and their agents, they should continue pushing the transport unions and traders to increase prices to cause economic disaffection for the NDC government. And Nana from Spintex says, please, where were the NPP when Kenneth Bank was charging us as a catalyst for our bonds and loans? Again, where were they when the PDS took over our monies from ECG? Isn't it clear Ibrahim Mahama has all it takes to run this mine? And this one also says, didn't add a name. So what exactly is the minority MPP looking for? We all frown on sole sourcing. Now that it is competitive bidding, they are still crying foul. What at all do they want? Thank you very much for your messages. My name is Kenneth. Gyasi?
My name is Gemma, Appiah.
And do not forget to do the 2 this evening. Brush your teeth with Pepsodent before you go to bed, and do same tomorrow morning. Right after News Night, we have Gig Squad, and Adobia is already in the studio. Adobia, what are we talking about this evening?
This evening, we are going to be talking about AI built by Africans, actually AI solutions, and not focusing more on what we are getting from the West by doing something for ourselves. So sovereign AI, that will be our conversation.